All right, everybody, what's going on? Here we are live together this fabulous Saturday morning. I posted at 8 a.m. Pacific time, but I'm actually on Eastern time, so I just wanted to catch some of you who are over on the West Coast. But anyway, I'm interested to get into today because we have a few things that have been good developments in the world of healthcare. So for one, the ICD-9 code for aging has struck through the World Health Organization. That's kind of a deal. So we'll dive into that a little bit. Zotzman, creator of the 10-Pass, was tagged by the FDA. At least the rumors are there. And there's some information circulating around that. We'll jump into that a little bit more today. Another thing I want to dive into is hyperbaric oxygen and ozone therapy. What's the difference? How do they work? Ozone and the microbiome, that's a really common question. I mean, our microbiome is super important. We need, according to Dr. Bush, about 30,000 bacterial species in our microbiome for us to be healthy and flourishing. So if you're sticking ozone into the colon, what does it do? So we're going to dive into that and a few other things that I have on schedule here that we can go to as well. I don't know if I'm going to take calls today. We'll have to see. I'll be interested to see where this goes today. Last time it was awesome. It was a good time. But is volume working? I believe this is working. Are you guys able to hear me? Let me know if you can't. But anyway, let's start with the World Health Organization considering aging a disease. And why is this important? Well, I was talking to somebody at a conference recently. I think his name was Mike. But he was telling me how if you get people to switch their paradigm to that aging is a disease, they're going to be more preventative in nature, which I think is a good thing. But I think this is a double-edged sword to consider aging a disease, because on one side, you're kind of thinking, well, maybe I can live forever. Maybe I can live to 150, 180. And I just don't buy into that as a premise. But that comes from a more philosophical base, I guess. I just don't think we're built to last to 180 or more years like some people are seeming to think. And I think we should embrace aging. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. There's a lot of good things that come with aging, like cheese or wine, has more character, more depth, and those types of things are good. But anyway, with the World Health Organization considering aging a disease, it's only a matter of time before that comes to the United States, and they're going to actually able to bill insurance companies for the disease of aging. So that's kind of an interesting development, and we'll see exactly where that goes. I think it could go one of two ways. I think it could be beneficial for kind of the more integrative healthcare system, more preventative in nature, trying to produce longer life expectancies essentially, and that would be good. But I think the other thing that could happen is that people just go along the lines of what they already do, is that you start getting drugs and development of different things that aren't necessarily good for the disease of aging. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out, but I think it could be huge for the healthcare system. We'll see. Another thing that was interesting recently, the Zotzman has been tagged by the FDA. So what does that mean? Well, none of the machines are getting into the United States anymore, so it seems, and this is a little bit of rumor, so it's not necessarily true. I've heard it from multiple sources, though, so I'm kind of wondering if this is accurate, what's going on. I have heard of some people got their machines confiscated, and so that could be bad for ozone therapy in the sense that the FDA is a little bit more concerned about the machines and things that are coming into the country. Because the Zotzman was sending a $20,000 machine as a water purifier. So the FDA obviously looked at that and said, that doesn't look like a water purifier. And so they got in trouble. And so we'll see what happens there. There's been a number of times that the FDA has caught on to somebody working with ozone in the past. Usually it's just kind of like a cease and desist. Oh, the other thing is Herman, I heard, which is the other manufacturer of 10-Pass, is actually been asked to recall all the machines that they sold in the United States, which doesn't mean the doctor has to return it. It just means that the Herman company, if that happened, would have to request all of their equipment back due to the FDA. And if the doctor decides to send that back, that's their choice. But could be potentially bad. I guess we'll see how this plays out. It could just be kind of a blip on the radar. We don't exactly know. Have any of you guys in the chat heard about this Zotzman thing going on, or this Herman thing going on, just go ahead and post that. That'll be interesting to see. And you might also notice wearing an Ozonaut t-shirt today. So we actually sold out of those really quickly. I was surprised when I sent out an email on these t-shirts. They're kind of corny, but they're fun or whatever, and let me promote Ozone. But I was surprised because I was thinking like 1 or 2 people would buy the t-shirt out of the email list, and we went through a lot. So I had to make another order, and they'll be going out soon. But yeah, that was pretty exciting. All right. So this last conference, I got into a very interesting conversation with a Dr. Bill Delp. And so Bill Delp is he was very fascinating in the work that he's been doing. He's been working with hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So if you're not familiar with hyperbaric oxygen, essentially they increase the pressure of the oxygen. They put you in a chamber, then they increase the pressure up to like 2.6 or 3 atmospheres. So it's basically, not 3 times stronger, but 3 atmospheres. And that forces the oxygen into the interstitial fluid. And so that's a good thing because oxygen is getting into the plasma, into the interstitial fluid, and then from the interstitials, it's getting into the lymph, and that can help the lymph to speed up, recovery and those types of things. And then from the lymph, it goes into the lymphatic system, which is the brain. So it can help you to detoxify your brain. But he was a very interesting guy. So he started off his past in hyperbarics on a commercial oil rig. So they would have divers that would get injuries, really deep down. So they would have to send down a capsule, encapsulate this diver who might have just lost his finger or something, and, have a way to quickly pull him up without having him get bends or, a disease where you could die from because it's very serious. So Bill Delp was an engineer on these oil rigs, and just a very complex process of mixing of gases. And it's not only the pressure that you have to be cautious of, but the mixture of gases that you're using. So anyway, this guy knew a ton about the medical use in gas, and he actually worked with Dr. Frank Schallenberger kind of at the beginning. He said before Dr. Schallenberger became famous, they were working together on some stuff. So I hope to have him on for an interview. But we talked quite a bit on a lot of different topics, but it was really interesting for me to get a better picture of hyperbaric oxygen therapy and how it really has a lot of similarities to ozone therapy and what it's doing in the body. So people wonder, can you use hyperbaric oxygen and ozone therapy in tandem? And I would say yes, you can, because ozone therapy is able to basically increase your oxygen efficiency. It's able to do some things that has a sustained effect. It's not just a 24-hour thing. Your microcirculation and those types of things are claimed to have a kind of a long-lasting effect. Hyperbaric oxygen might even be definitely more effective in neurological cases. Like if I got a concussion, I'm going to do ozone therapy, but I'm definitely going to do hyperbaric oxygen therapy because, like I said, it's getting into the interstitial fluid, it's getting into the plasma, it's getting into the lymph, it's getting into the lymphatic, and it's helping you to eliminate a lot of the byproduct you don't need. There was actually a really interesting study that was done with a pig. They put it into a hyperbaric chamber, a young pig. What they did is they drew a line out, and they drew all the blood out of the pig, leaving the interstitial fluid and the plasma. But they drew all the red blood cells out of the pig, which are the pieces or the cells that actually carry oxygen. So on a red blood cell, there's 4 points for oxygen. They took all of that out of the pig, unconscious, it was sedated, and they infused, they had it in the hyperbaric chamber, infusing and pressurizing the oxygen into the interstitial fluid of this pig. Now, they did this for 3 days, 3 consecutive days. This pig was sedated without any blood, but in a hyperbaric chamber. After 3 days, they reinfused all the blood into the pig. They took it out of sedation. It was totally fine. It actually went on and lived a normal life with the other pigs. Really fascinating, though, that they were able to show the efficacy of getting oxygen into the system. Even if you had no red blood cells, your body would still be able to operate on this hyperbaric oxygen. So super fascinating. But anyway, let me circle back around to what I was saying is I think hyperbaric oxygen should be used in instances over ozone therapy, especially those with brain damage and neurological disorders. The thing with hyperbaric oxygen, though, is that it's kind of difficult to do because you got to spend at least an hour to 2 hours, in the chamber. And then you have to do it on a consecutive basis. You have to do it like 20 days in a row for you to really get the beneficial effect. They said like doing once a month is like, it's a drop in the bucket. It really doesn't do much. You get the beneficial effect from the consecutive use of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. The other thing he said is don't use those ones that are just, zip up cloth ones. He said those are a joke. They basically refer to all the studies, medical studies done with the metal chambers that can basically take you up more atmospheres than those cloth ones. So if you've seen those, he said stay away from those. But anyway, this guy's name is Bill Delp. He's in Florida. I think he said he charges like $4,000 for 20 sessions, which is actually a very good price. So he probably spends close to that in oxygen. So he's giving people a really good price on that. It's William or Bill Delp. I don't know what his website is, but very fascinating. And so ozone therapy might be able to used in conjunction, or if you don't have access to hyperbaric oxygen, a good alternative in the case of neurological or brain damage and those types of things. And ozone therapy, obviously, they have some similar effects in that they're producing reactive oxidant species, which produces a response in the body for antioxidants and thus kind of rebalances the body into homeostasis. So let's see if we got some questions here. Nice shirt. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. Wendy, you're waiting for yours to come. I know. I'm sorry. I had to put an order because we actually sold out. But yeah, we'll get those shipped out to you right away. And if you want a shirt, by the way, why not put it in the... Yeah, I'll put a link in here. We'll put a link in the chat. Here's where you get the shirt. Oh, did that work? Perfect. Anyway, very interesting diving into the hyperbaric oxygen and ozone therapy. Let's go into... I went pretty quick through that kind of stuff. I think the ICD-9 code, I kind of brushed by that, but for aging, yeah, I think it could be a double-edged sword. But let's talk about ozone and the microbiome. So I just published a new article about rectal insufflation and ozone therapy. I don't know, it's like 20 pages, so it's a little bit longer, but it's worth reading if you're interested in this stuff, or you have somebody who wants to learn about it. It's a great article, and I'll post a link in the description of this video so you can see it. But it's just up on drzone.com now, and I need to make a couple small edits to it. But anyway, so ozone and the microbiome. We often talk about how important the microbiome is. It's often referred to as the second brain because it produces such a strong effect throughout the body. If you have a bad gut, you can have brain fog and all these other things, and it can really mess with you. So naturally, a lot of people want to ensure, well, if I'm putting ozone, which is an oxidant, into the colon, is it killing most of the anaerobic bacterial species that are in there? And that's a very good question because we don't want to cause that to happen. So there's people on both sides. There's people like I interviewed Dr. Robbins. He said, oh, definitely, it's killing off your microbiome and you need to take a probiotic. Here's one that I sell, kind of thing. And so he was saying use the probiotic for if you're doing the rectal insufflation. Now, I found it interesting, though, because when you look at like Dr. Bacci or Sylvia Menendez, they said, well, no, it actually doesn't have a negative effect. It has a positive effect on the microbiome. And that just was hard for me to get my head around. Like, why would insufflation of ozone and oxygen gas into the colon have a positive effect on anaerobic species there? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And unfortunately, Dr. Bacci didn't really cite any sources or anything like that. He just kind of said it off the cuff, like in his book, that he does that quite often, actually. But I found a paper, a study that was done, and I think it's just because I haven't done enough digging. I think there's a lot more information out there. It's just sometimes difficult to find because articles will be in Spanish or they'll be in another country, and they're just kind of buried. So usually when I'm trying to research this stuff, I find like a good overview paper, and then I check all the sources for what they referred, and that's a good way for me to find stuff. I did get Ed McCabe's book, Flood Your Body with Oxygen, which in my opinion is he doesn't cite a single source in the book. So that's a little bit disturbing to me. But anyway, he did at the end have a full list of all the studies that Dr. Sylvia Menendez has done. And Dr. Menendez has the most clinical experience with rectal insufflation in the world. She's done hundreds of thousands of these treatments. So anyway, back to ozone and the microbiome. How does this not negatively affect the microbiome? So they had a study with 34 patients where they had dysbiosis, and dysbiosis is an imbalance of bacterial species in the gut. So if you're dysbiotic, that can be the root of a lot of other diseases. So you need to have your gut in check, because that's a big part of your immune system. It's a big part of your hormonal system. It's a big part of everything. So it's super important to have a healthy gut, and we know this. But they took all these patients who had dysbiosis, unhealthy guts, some sort of imbalance, and they did rectal insufflation with ozone on them for 90 days. And all of them, every single one, saw an improvement in the dysbiosis, where they were back and better to where they needed to be. So I thought it was really interesting. Well, it backed up at least what Dr. Bacci was saying in a more theoretical standpoint. Well, ozone actually should have an equilibrium effect on the gut biome. And so this wasn't necessarily looking directly at the gut biome. It was looking at dysbiosis and kind of that disease thereof. But it was interesting, because if you did ozone into the gut and you had dysbiosis, you would think it would cause further dysbiosis if it was actually killing off the bacterial species, or at least killing off most of them. It would accentuate the dysbiosis, but they found the exact opposite. Essentially, it was actually aiding the dysbiosis and helping with that. So really interesting that ozone could potentially, based off of this clinical data, actually help with the bacterial species in the gut, actually help the microbiome. So another thing with that is, well, how does that actually work? And so I don't think we're 100% sure. My conjecture is that maybe it's just a small enough dose of ozone. We're doing a relatively small dose of ozone, 200 to 400 ml. Some people go up to 750, but that's not in the recommended chart. And 20 to 40 gamma, relatively small. And instantly, the ozone is actually ingested into the intestinal wall. The oxygen is taken right into the bloodstream, and the ozone, it reacts with the mucoproteins on the intestinal wall, and it creates lipid peroxides and reactive oxygen species, and that's drawn into the blood then. So it has a very quick reaction rate, and it doesn't travel up the colon. And it seems that because of its quick reaction rate, not with the bacterial species, but the mucoproteins, and the fact that it doesn't travel up the colon and that it's quickly expelled typically, is that it really just would have an inconsequential effect, and positively, or somehow it has a positive effect for the microbiome. So we don't exactly understand it, but there's some pretty good information indicating that ozone actually might help with dysbiosis or microbiome issues. So very interesting. There was a ton of information that took a long time just to find even that basic information, but I thought it was great to know, like, hey, here's kind of a theoretical side. Here's not proven, but here's like a clinical study where we took, a group of patients. We're able to demonstrate, that with these patients it worked pretty well. I'm going to post the article here to the chat, actually, so you guys can directly look at it at your will. Can we talk about cupping? Yes, we can, Wendy, of course. Miss Doman. Hope you're doing well, by the way. Ozone cupping. So the only reason that you do cupping is if there's like a sore or wound, ulcer on the torso. Because typically, if it's on the limb, they do like a limb bag. So they'll stick your limb in, or your hand into a bag, say at a sore here, and we'll infuse ozone gas into the bag, and then that's exposing that sore wound to the ozone. And this does two things. It stimulates a it stimulates a healing response, and two, it kills off the bacteria. It's a really strong oxidant. So, and the reason it's able to do that too is not only because the ozone is an oxidant, but it actually helps the body to generate hydrogen peroxide in the affected area. So it goes deeper into the tissues because it starts an effect of those types of things. And so it's a very strong antiseptic. I mean, I was talking with I think I mentioned this last time, but Dr. Jennifer Orsua. And she was saying she had a patient with a non-healing wound where they grafted skin over the wound because it was right to the bone. So conventional, antibiotics, grafted skin over the wound. And a couple months later, it just reintroduced itself just south, a little bit below where it was before. And it was nasty. It was right to the bone. She showed me some pictures, and it was pretty grotesque. But she was actually able to close up that non-healing wound of months just with ozone and Lipogel 15%. So really, really potent for what it's able to do. But the cupping on the other side, you might know about cupping, which is where you put a cup onto the thing. You might have seen Michael Phelps kind of made it popular at the last Olympics. And they put negative pressure that draws the tissue into the cup, which draws blood to the area. So you're basically getting blood flow to muscles and areas that might be deprived of it or need it because you've been working out hard. This is different. This isn't like that. So ozone cupping is not like cupping in the sense that you're drawing negative pressure in. You're actually just putting the cup over the sore and infusing ozone into it. Now, what a lot of people do, and what Jason taught me, was called the triple threat. So if there's like a sore or a wound or something you're trying to treat with it, what a lot of doctors do is they actually do a combination of three things. So they start with injections around the wound, and they just take a small needle, and they go subdermally just under the skin with the ozone gas all around the wound. And so that's infusing the ozone gas into the area. And then they're taking an ozone cup and putting it right over the sore and infusing the ozone gas in there. And then they'll send the patient home with like a Lipogel 15%, an ozonated oil, ozonated gel. And that helps, continue the healing process. So does that kind of answer your question? If you have more questions, just go ahead. If done properly, hold on. Sorry, that's probably annoying into the microphone. Oh well. If done properly, can nasal ozone therapy still cause some sort of damage? How often can nasal ozone therapy be done? Anything else to be aware of when doing nasal ozone therapy? So I'm assuming you're talking about when they shoot ozone gas directly into the nasal passageway, which I'm a little bit congested. I could probably use, but they don't breathe it. So ozone, obviously, you can't breathe. Very harmful to breathe. There's no antioxidants in the lungs, so once it goes down there, it's directly interacting with the lung tissue, and that's bad. I don't generally give people any information on doing the nasal ozone therapy just because I don't want any liability on that, because there is the high potential that somebody will breathe it in. So typically when I'm doing these videos, I just don't talk about it. I don't know what kind of damage could be, and because I don't talk about it, I haven't researched it a ton. Personally, if I had an infection up there, that's what I would do. And that's just personally. I'm not suggesting anybody to do that, anything like that. And how often you can do it, I'm not exactly sure. I just don't know a ton about it because I've kind of stayed away from it intentionally. Jason, if you're in the chat, can you actually follow up with that maybe? I don't know if you have any resources. What about using the cups topically into the lungs for cancer, along with oil bubbler into the lungs? Cups into the lungs, I'm not sure. But what you're talking about, oil bubbler into the lungs, is basically you can have the generator. So Wendy asked the question about bubbling ozone through oil and breathing the ozonides that come through the oil. Now, this is, again, kind of a more controversial thing, so I'm not telling you guys to do this or anything. I'm just saying what people say about it. But they'll take the generator. They'll be making the ozone gas and taking it into a container like this that would be full of oil. And there would be a top on here, and there would be an exit port. Now, out of the exit port, I would actually have that hooked to a cannula and be breathing what is said to be the ozonides, not the ozone gas, but the ozonides from the oil. So the idea is that the ozone gas goes down into the oil and makes bonds with the oil and emerges some grade of ozonides. And these are said to be safe to breathe because they've already oxidized, that they don't have the oxidizing potential that ozone gas does. Now, when I was talking to Dr. Robbins, he claimed that there's just no way that you could get that ozone gas to be completely inert by the time it comes out of the top of the oil, that there's going to be some ozone gas in there, so you still have to be cautious with it. I know, on the other hand, that Dr. Lee Cowden religiously uses it for lung infections and lung cancer. So I don't know exactly where to place it. It's another one of those therapies that's just a little bit difficult because it's pretty controversial, considering that you're suggesting to breathe ozone gas, and I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying what people do. But, you know, I would just, personally, I feel okay with trying it out, but I don't know if it's something I would do on a regular basis. Yeah, exactly. You're breathing terpenes. Okay. I've heard people say ozonides, terpenes. Deborah just finished his certification course. Dr. Schallenberger's. I hope it was good. I'm sure it was. So another topic I think would be interesting to cover. Maybe we should take phone calls. No, we'll jump into ozone and dentistry for a minute here. So I was supposed to talk with Dr. Stuart Nunnally for like the 4th time yesterday in an interview, and it didn't come through again. We were kind of joking, well, maybe God for some reason doesn't want us to talk, because we've tried to set it up like 4 times, and just random things have made it not work. So really interesting. But anyway, ozone and dentistry, I think, has the most potential to get FDA approval, because it's just not as invasive, it's not as medical. And I think I might have covered this last time, but anyway, there's the idea of like focal infections, and I think biological dentistry is starting to use ozone a lot more now because it's a great alternative to what they currently have, and it's non-toxic. Once they put the ozone gas in, it interacts, it's just oxygen. So as long as they're not breathing it, it's totally safe to use. But basically there's the ozone gas, the reason they're using that, so if there's like a cavitation or osteonecrosis of the jawbone, or there's like a focal infection, which a focal infection basically just means that there's an infection somewhere in the mouth, and that can cause damage to the rest of the body, because basically you have an infection somewhere, it's able to travel and move. So I think that's a very sensible thing. For some reason, we've disassociated dentistry with the rest of the body. I liked what Dr. Nunnally was saying is like, hey, we're putting like mercury and stuff into the mouth that, you know, if I went to a surgeon that was doing a knee replacement and said, hey, instead of titanium, add a little mercury to it, he would look at me like I'm crazy. Like, why would you do that? You'd be poisoning the patient. Yet we do the exact same thing with dentistry. So doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We kind of treat the mouth like it's like this isolated area that it's not going to affect the rest of the body. But it's how we digest things. It's how we eat and drink. Of course it's going to affect the rest of the body. Got to be crazy to not think it does. But anyway, if you get infections in the mouth, that can cause havoc on your system. So again, going back to the bucket theory, if you have an infection in your mouth, you want to take care of it, because if you get another infection or something else going on, you can eventually start to ramp up your inflammation, your chronic inflammation, and get into a state of chronic inflammation, which could nurture a chronic disease. So these are things that you want to take care of as soon as you can, take preventative measures. But the ozone gas they're using into osteonecrosis of the jawbone, because it's able to get down into all the pores, all the tubules of the tooth, and eliminate the bacterial infections. Got quite a few comments here. Said it's great for chronic lung illness. If someone puts the ozone gas into nanobubbles using a nanobubble generator, will be more effective than ozone gas because 1 mil can fit 1 mil bubbles. You know, I think so. What I'm understanding your question is if we make the bubbles smaller for either oil or water, is that going to basically help it to bond faster, right, or better? And the answer is yes. You know, in theory, because you're increasing the amount of surface area. So if you have more small bubbles, you're going to have more surface area where those ozone molecules can be exposed to the water or the oil, and therefore has more potential to bond. Whereas if you have one large bubble, there's all the ozone molecules in the middle that aren't getting that potential. So yes, in practicality, as far as making ozone water, it's like probably a difference of 30 seconds to a minute, whether you're using nanobubbles or just like a regular bubbler. Like, so if your saturation level is 12 minutes per 8 ounces for ozone water, so let's say you have the regular bubbler and a nano bubbler, might take 12 minutes with the regular bubbler, might take 10 minutes with the nano bubbler. Was it really worth the investment to save the 2 minutes to make that extra strength ozone water? I don't exactly know, but I've heard that question before, and I just don't feel convinced that you need to get nano bubbles to make strong ozone water. All right, so I'm going to turn my phone on here. We're going to try to take some calls here in a second. I went through a lot of my material a lot faster than I thought I would. So give me a call. Let's take some calls. I have some latency here on the stream, so I'm probably good 30 seconds behind you guys. Another interesting article, a lot of articles I've been seeing lately, is on ozone and herniated discs. So it's one of the best things out there that you can do for herniated discs, according to these studies, because they're getting like 70 to 80% success rate and remediation of a herniated disc just with ozone injections, which is crazy because that's like the same success rate as like surgery. So if you can have a minimally invasive treatment for like $300-400 and get your herniated disc fixed, that's a pretty big deal because you can avoid surgery. You don't have to do, something that's so invasive, something that's so wreaks so much havoc on your body. So I think I just can't believe that that's not already a part of like the medical system, because like it's able to work with these joints, these herniated discs so effectively. It would seem like at least the insurance would be interested in picking it up because you can do for $400 injection as opposed to $20,000 for a surgery. So it's beyond me why this isn't picked up. So we got all these people and none of you are calling me. What's going on? That's fine. I'm not worried about it. We'll see what goes on. Did I post that link for the article? I did. Another thing I wanted to mention. Let's do a couple of not commercials, but a couple of things here. So Ozonaut 3, Turkey Day is coming up. Black Friday is coming up. A lot of people like to buy things. A lot of people expect discounts. I don't typically like to give discounts, but people expect it. So what can I do? I secretly put together a coupon code just for you guys, and nobody is going to know about it except for you. Not even my brother, who is the co-owner of Ozonaut3.com, knows about this. So keep it on the hush because we don't want to alert him to what I'm about to tell you guys, because we're going to give you 40% off on all the products from Ozonaut 3. And if you don't know Ozonaut 3, it's ozone creams, ozone gels for the skin and the mouth, which you guys might know is useful for a lot of different things. If you just search ozone and ozonated oils online, you'll see all the different things it can be used for. So code TURKEY for 40% off. And where'd you go? I was just about to answer your phone call. Oh, well. So code TURKEY for 40% off, Ozonaut3.com. It's obviously going to expire after Cyber Monday, but you'll get access to all the products on Ozonaut3.com. Ozone creams, ozone gel for the mouth, ozone toothpaste. There's even an ozone cream for your pet if you want, and it's specially formulated just to be able to penetrate and get into the pet despite the fur, because a lot of our furry friends just have a barrier to get to the skin. So anyway, these are really great products. They've actually been picking up in popularity quite a lot, especially in Amazon. I think just the more and more we get the product out there to people, I'm a really bad marketer. We don't do much marketing, but the product kind of speaks for itself. So people I can't really make any claims, unfortunately, on video. I can, let's see if I can post a picture. So I've seen people claim that they've had reversal in acne, sores, and different things like that. But let's take a call right here. You keep on calling. You keep on hanging up. I don't know if you're messing with me or you're scared. I don't know. I'm just kidding. But anyway, code Turkey, 40% off, honest03.com. Great products. We brought a new standard to ozone oils. We no longer just eyeball it and say, hey, that looks good, which is what pretty much everybody does. So you get a very inconsistent oil. You don't know what you're going to get each and every time. So we use European pharmacological standards because it's manufactured in Italy to produce this very high-grade ozone cream and ozone gel. Now, there's another product somebody told me about recently, and I'm not making any money for this. It's called Zen Blend. And while you guys are not calling me, I'm just going to quit looking like an idiot and take this call me thing off because somebody wants to call, feel free. Last time we had a ton of people call in. This time, not so much. Anyway, Zen Blend. If you wonder how I stay so cool, so calm all the time, I never get stressed out. That's a lie. Anybody that works with me knows I get stressed from time to time. But I'm a pretty easygoing guy. But even if I wasn't and I was stressed, Zen Blend is a blend you can put of coffee. It uses calming, adaptogens, mushrooms, things that people seem to love nowadays. And you take a scoop of that, put it in your coffee. It tastes like kind of a bitter mocha. But anyway, a friend of mine has been producing this. David King has been helping out with it. So I just wanted to give him some credit for, and I think it was Blake Bowman too, but for developing this product because I think it's a good thing that you're starting to put organic mushrooms, and it's really high-grade stuff. Like, they don't have anything that you wouldn't want in it, so I really appreciate their effort to make sure it's all natural, that it's not invasive or anything like that. Let's see if we got more questions here. What are your thoughts on IV saline ozone therapy? So, IV saline ozone therapy. The only thing I know about it is what I've heard, because I don't have any actually hands-on experience with it, and I've done a little bit of reading, but not much. So it seems like this is something that started more in Russia and has gravitated to other areas. Really hasn't made it into the United States. I think there's a couple guys in Tennessee that work with it, but that's about it. All right, let's take... Whoever has that 530 area code, it keeps on coming in and just dying, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Maybe that'll fix it. All right, so the IV saline, there's a couple guys in Tennessee that say they have really good effects with the IV saline. Now, for some reason, it was partially condemned by Dr. Veliobaci, at least at some point, because he said you basically create interactions with the saline that you don't necessarily want to go into the body. So why wouldn't you just do blood and ozone like a normal person? It's basically what he said. But that being said, I really just don't know much about the IV saline. It seems like people appreciate what it does, that it seems to have some good effects. Basically, I know that they can't make it too strong, though, because if you make the saline too strong, you could actually burn up the veins and those types of things. So they have a bubbler, and it's putting in a very small amount as it's going into the body. But we got a call coming in here, so we're going to take that. Hey, what's going on?
Hi.
Hey.
Oh, a live person?
Yeah, who am I talking with?
Hi, my name is Ruth, and I have a question.
Yeah, Ruth, what's going on?
Hi. So my daughter has been diagnosed with a very quote-unquote rare blood disorder. All right, they keep asking her if she's been to other countries and blah, 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 and this very famous hospital sent her home to, just die. And so help. I know we did a stem cell, and that has, elongated her life, but she's really back to being very, very orange person. The liver completely total liver failure, they say, and it's affecting kidneys, blah, 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 blah.
Well, I'm really sorry to hear. Do you know kind of what? I'm really sorry to hear about that. Do you know what what kind of disease? Is it like a cancer? Is it like an autoimmune? Or just like what's going on?
No, they can't diagnose it. It's just it's so rare they're going to put it in their books. And a very famous school, I'm not going to mention the name, they can't identify it. And they've asked her many times if she was out of the country. Now her dad was in Vietnam for many years, exposed to, of course, a lot of chemicals. So I don't know. No diagnosis.
Okay. Well, I don't know. It's. First of all, I have to disclaim I'm not a medical practitioner and can't give medical advice. But I don't really, without knowing what it is, huh?
Your show.
Yeah, without knowing exactly what's going on, it's difficult to say because, like you said, it's kind of something new. So there's no like resource I can go back to and say like, oh, this is what this doctor did or this is what this study did. I can say. Yes. Some of the fundamental things with ozone therapy, and specifically with the blood, is the rheology of the blood. So blood rheology is how well the blood flows throughout the body. So there's and there's a number of different parameters for this. There's the blood viscosity. So good viscosity would be like water. It flows, it's fluid, it doesn't have issues. Bad viscosity would be like molasses. It's slow, thick, and sticky. So ozone is said to be able to help with that, but also another part of the rheology of the blood that a lot of people don't know is that the cells need to be able to fold up to fit into very small capillaries. So the ozone actually stimulates a process for that to happen more effectively.
Oh, good. Yeah, because she's retaining a lot of water because of what you just said. And she also has ammonia that they can't, understand why that's happening.
Well, a thing to comment on too, so with like anemia and blood clotting issues, ozone therapy is actually a contraindication. So that means don't use it in those circumstances because it's only going to make the blood flow better. So if you have anemia, that's actually a reason to not use ozone. The other thing, I know Dr. Jimenez says he uses rectal insufflation ozone therapy to help detox the liver. I'd be interested too, talking to somebody like Bill Delp. And I can, if you drop your email in the chat, if you're comfortable with that, I'll follow up with you. And Bill Delp is a really interesting guy that I was talking about earlier that works with the hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And I kind of wonder if he would have any experience with something like that, because that's forcing the oxygen not only into the blood, but into the interstitial fluid, into the plasma, and into the lymph, so the oxygen, which is really important, is getting to areas it typically wouldn't. So I don't know. That might be worth talking to him about. He's also familiar with ozone therapy, so he could coach you through that too, I'm sure. But just drop your email in the chat, and I'll connect you guys and see if he has some more guidance for you.
Yeah, I will. And also, by the way, is all the doctors you're talking about, you guys are all in the state of Washington?
Which doctors?
The gentleman you just mentioned, Jimenez, and then the other doctor with a BER or something?
Oh, Bill. So there's Dr. Jimenez is out of Tijuana, Mexico, and then Dr. Bill Delp is out of Florida. But even he would still be worth just talking to like, even if you can't get necessarily with him, there's hyperbaric oxygen treatments around. So he would be a person I would talk to about that. And I'm actually not in the state of Washington right now. I am half the year. I'm in Michigan. Yeah.
Oh, so. Yeah. I spoke to your dad a while back. Yeah, he told me that you guys are up there. Thank you so much for taking this call, and I will leave my cookie cat email, okay?
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you, Ruth. Good talking to you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, I'll throw my number back up on here in case you guys want to talk. I appreciate you guys being here. Like I said, it's just super cool to be able to throw a camera on, be sitting in my office, and be able to hear from you guys, have some interaction. I really appreciate it. I think there needs to be more conversation around ozone therapy and how we can help bring that to people who don't know about it as an option. I don't really care if people aren't into the idea of ozone therapy, but I want them to know what ozone therapy could potentially do. So my objective is just to inform people and give them the information that's out there to allow them to make the choice of what they would like to do with it. I don't really care with what they do with it beyond that, but I think there's a lot of valuable information here. Like the herniated discs thing. If the options are surgery, which has like a 70% success rate for $20,000, or ozone for $500 with a 70% success rate, what do you think people would choose? They would probably choose the $500 one, see if it works, and go from there. So we got another call coming in. Let's take it. Hey, what's going on? Who am I talking with?
Gary Krupa. I want to know
Hey, Gary.
Studies that are comparing ozone saline, MAH, 10-pass, and UBI for efficiency.
So what was your question?
Well, what's the advantage and disadvantage of each of those therapies?
Oh, okay. So
that.
we got IV saline, 10-pass, and ozone UBI. Those three?
Right.
Okay, so I don't know a ton about IV saline. So it's hard for me to remark on the differences. I know it's a little bit more expensive, a little bit more time than doing and a little bit more particular than doing the ozone UBI. But I just can't remark much on the saline. Now, the difference between 10-pass and major autohemotherapy plus ozone, I can talk on a little bit. So this kind of reaches into an argument that exists currently about which is better, doing a normal dose of ozone like in the UBI, major autohemotherapy, or doing a higher dose of ozone, which is the 10-pass. So the 10-pass took ozone therapy and said, hey, how much ozone can we put into the blood, and will that stimulate a beneficial effect? So if you look at most of the people who are more scientific in nature on ozone therapy, they actually don't promote 10-pass because they say you get the same physiological benefit if you do a regular dose of ozone. But oftentimes these people are, looking more at theory. They're not necessarily as clinically attuned as more of the clinicians. So on one side of my head, you have people in Italy like Dr. Lamberto Ray that I did the study with, who's very scientific, very knowledgeable about ozone, says that, we can stimulate the same result with a regular dose of ozone. But then on the other side, you have people like Robert Rowan, who says, man, I was doing the regular dose of ozone for a long time, but when I switched to 10-pass, I started getting a lot better results with it. And that's more of a clinical perspective. So he's just not super in-depth on the theory and the biochemistry and those types of things, but he's very clinically attuned to what's going on with his patients. So I think the differences as far as patient outcomes, I'm more on the side of the camp, hey, let's standardize ozone therapy and use it within the windows that the scientific community has set. So that would be like the ozone UBI. The other advantage with the ozone UBI is that it has UBI built in, which is ultraviolet blood irradiation. And this was shown by a company named Vasogen and proven through all these studies and process patents that these guys did, that UBI with ozone actually produces a synergistic effect, and which is more effective than ozone alone or UBI alone. So if you use the two in conjunction, you get a better therapy. So that would be another criticism I would have with 10-pass, is that they're usually not adding in the UBI, which is a synergistic and produces a better result than just the ozone. The other thing with the 10-pass is that it's super expensive. $1,000 is generally a lower end price, so you'll see anything from $600 up to like $2,000 for a 10-pass treatment. Ozone UBI is like $200. So I think from that standpoint, it's also more convenient. But with the 10-pass, it seems like people have been able to demonstrate reasonable results. So I think it's just kind of one of those things that we don't know a ton on yet, and we're waiting for more research to come out about it.
Is heparin used with UBI?
10-pass?
not with the 10 test, but well, basically UBI. I mean, I'm not sure I would like to add heparin into the system. And so minimum heparin that's used with either UBI or 10 test.
Yeah, well, they have to use heparin typically. Even the 10 pass does, because otherwise the blood will clot up. So they're almost always using heparin. With the 10 pass, you definitely would need it. Possibly with major autohemotherapy, you could get away without it if you're just mixing with saline, possibly. So that would be your better luck, or your better odds if you're trying to avoid heparin. And sodium citrate is another anticoagulant, so it prevents the blood from clotting. But most people that do ozone therapy don't suggest that, because Dr. Bacci said don't use sodium citrate. It creates interactions you don't want.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Good to talk to you, Gary. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cool. Cool. You guys are cool. You're all cool. I like all of you. We like each other. That's cool. Oh, major autohemotherapy. See Dr. Schallenberger in Nevada. Wendy, I'm not familiar with the chemotherapy for a parasite program. I have no idea. I did hear, so Dr. John Crow's in Aruba. Ooh, international call. Let's take that one. Hey, what's going on? Who am I talking with?
Hi, Micah.
Hey. Who are we talking with?
Hi, this is Wendy.
Hey, Wendy, how are you?
Micah?
Yeah. I can hear, I think I can hear myself in the background a little bit. Could you turn off the audio?
Yeah,
Cool.
I just did that. I wasn't sure if you were live in front of me or if you're... So, Micah, what I'm trying to get off the ground here, being in a little snowbird community with a lot of parasite problems, I'm trying to get the ozone going with the gemotherapy. Are you familiar with gemotherapy?
Not at all.
You know, okay, it's in between homeopathy and herbal therapy. They're made from the young part of the plant, like the buds and leaves, and they work on the cellular level. So for killing off parasites, you're going to get a better die-off using gemos than using just herbal tinctures
Okay.
or homeopathy.
So it's said to be just a better herbal.
They're good now. So, yeah. So what I'm trying to do is use the rectal ozone as part of the program, or using the ear insufflations for the sinus areas, because they actually are finding, things like salmonella in the sinus tissues and different tissues in the body. With the gemofuse, you wouldn't even get it out of those tissues. So I was wondering, with the ozone, if that isn't going to be, maybe get a better die-off with using ozone with the... I haven't heard anybody doing a parasite program. I've been trying to find information online with the ozone and parasites.
Yeah, so I was actually just commenting. I talked to a Dr. Crows out of Aruba recently, and they have a lot of parasitic problems there apparently, but he's been using rectal insufflation ozone for parasites, and he says he traditionally gets pretty good results with it, in the sense that people are dispelling parasites out of the gut. Now, I, in my own mind, have a little bit... I think that ozone is, I'm the Ozonaut. I think ozone can be used for a lot of things, and I think it would be a good thing to do from a health standpoint. However, getting rid of the parasites, I'm not sure that, based on what it's doing in the body with immune modulation and oxygen efficiency, which are good things, that it's necessarily going after the parasites like the herbal or the gemotherapy things that you're using. So I would think maybe it's a good adjunctive if the parasites are on the colon and those types of things, because it can help to cleanse out the colon and seems to have some sort of good response for people who have an imbalanced microbiome. So maybe something's going on there that we just don't know about. But I would definitely add in personally, if I had parasites in the colon, I would definitely add into the rectal insufflation. I mean, it seems like a obvious connection to me. But and I know some people will do like ozonated saline into the colon, which might have a little bit more of an in-depth reach, whereas like the gas just kind of goes in for the first few inches. More of an enema thing might have a further reach into that.
Okay, so they're just putting the ozone into the saline and running like an enema through the colon. They're such a sort of like what they would with the lungs.
Yeah, you'll want to find a protocol on it. But yeah, I mean, I know people that do that for like parasitic cleanse. I think Katerina, if you're here, maybe you could comment on it. I think she's used ozone for parasites quite extensively, and her Facebook page is Healing Together. So if you go to Facebook and go to Healing Together, she has a Facebook page and a Facebook group where you can actually interact with other people who have done a lot of like parasitic cleanses and stuff.
Okay. That sounds good. So Healing Together. All right, that sounds great. So how many, do you know roughly how many they're doing like in a week? Is it like 2 to 4 daily? Like, one a day for 5 days, or are they just figuring it as they go along?
I'm not sure. This.
Like I do muscle testing, so I'm doing kinesiology to sort of find out what their body needs. So
Okay.
I don't know if they're following the protocol.
Yeah, and it's a little bit tough to hear, so I'll answer this question and then we'll have to get back to it. But I think that they're doing it on a daily basis. Now, the regular protocol for ozone is to do every day for 3 weeks and then take 1 week off. So I don't know if they're doing something different for parasites that's more specific to that, but I would just run back to that standard protocol if nothing else.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, good to talk to you, Wendy. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, you too. Yeah, thank you so much. And just keep up the great work. It's lovely. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
So Wendy is awesome. I've known her for at least a few years now. Working out of Mexico. Very cool place to be working, I would imagine. I should say very warm place. But anyway, I want to do another bid for these shirts. So if you're into the idea of wearing an Ozonaut t-shirt, which I don't know why you wouldn't be, because who doesn't want to show off their pride for ozone therapy? This is what they look like. Da 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 da. And you can get one of these shirts if you want. And I wasn't even planning on selling these, but people started asking for them. So give the people what they want. Am I right? All right. It's drzozone.com/shirt. You can see this. It's a very rudimentary page that, if you can't tell, I built it. So I'm not a web designer, but I made that page, and I'm not very proud of it, but you can kind of tell, yeah, this looks like something Micah put together because it's not very good. But I did make the page, and the shirts will get shipped out, and you can have a shirt. You can show off your pride. If you're an ozone doctor, you can be an Ozonaut. So, but I have another thing that I'm supposed to do here. Just 1 second. Just hold on, I'm coming back. All right. And now, if you're a doctor, you might be familiar with pulsed electromagnetic therapy. Again, I'm not making any money from these guys. I just want to support people in the community that I think are doing a great job with their holistic healthcare and what they got going on. So, I'm wearing a shirt and a hat for Pulse Centers. Now, you might be wondering, hey, Micah, why aren't you wearing your Ozonaut t-shirt that you just told me about? Well, the reason is because I want to support Pulse Centers. Pulse Centers has a uncomparable technology for pulsed electromagnetic therapy. Now, there's a gentleman named Tom Butler, who is a good friend of mine. He works for Pulse Centers. I'm going to put his information into the chat here. But why would a doctor be interested in pulsed electromagnetic therapy? Well, let me tell you, it's one of the best things you can do for acute pain. So pulsed electromagnetic therapy is able to address acute pain very effectively. And so what it's doing is it's actually sending a magnetic pulse into the body that's similar to a frequency that the body actually uses for reparation and healing. So as an example, as we are embryos, as people, we have all these frequencies going into the body that's essentially stimulating the body to grow and heal and do these different things. Now with pulse electromagnetic therapy, they can actually replicate a lot of those frequencies that the body uses to heal and do those types of things and stimulate healing responses, stimulate cell growth, regeneration, help with the acute pain. So it's able to do a lot of different things. And we're actually going to be hosting a training between myself, Pulse Centers, and, SOTMed, I should say, not myself, SOTMed, Pulse Centers, and Bales Photonics, which is a laser for acute pain. So we're going to teach doctors how to work with pain in the clinic using ozone, using PEMF, using lasers. And a doctor who's good, has a full functioning, I wouldn't recommend a machine like this because it's like 35 grand for somebody who is just dabbling. But for a doctor who has a organization, a clinic that's already up and going, they can generally pay it off within a year, and then everything there on out is profit. So if you're looking 5 years out, you have 4 years of profit, and the return on investment is pretty good. But you're also helping people to heal up the injuries that they got. I've used it extensively for back injury I sustained a while ago where I broke my back. I was doing Olympic weightlifting, and I was competing in all these things. Anyway, a lot of wreckage on my back happened. And one of the things that was really helpful, in addition to corrective exercise, was pulsed electromagnetic therapy. Now, the reason I think that is because it helped to stimulate a healing response, it decreased the inflammation, and it helped with the pain a lot. So, and it doesn't just help by cutting off the pain receptors, it helps by actually stimulating how the body's supposed to function. And so when you have something like that, you have a traumatic injury to the area of arthritis, inflammation starts to build up, and the body starts to just get into this cycle of inflammation, and it can get worse. But there needs to be something that intervenes and starts to produce an anti-inflammatory response. And so according to Bob Dennis, pulsed electromagnetic therapy is able to do that. So that's why I'm wearing the PEMF shirt. I'm going to drop his contact info right into this chat. So if you're interested in putting this into your clinic, pulsed electromagnetic therapy, Tom Butler is the man you want to talk to. I think I accidentally messed that up. All right, so there's his email. There's his business phone. Get at him. He's going to help you out with addressing acute pain in your clinic. May as well just leave this. Should I get back into my Ozonaut shirt? Should I get back into this? I don't know. Anyway, we've been talking for over an hour already. That's crazy. A lot of good things. I think as I bring this to a close, there's a few things I want to mention. I published the article for rectal insufflation ozone therapy. It's a 20-page article with about 50 sources cited onto drzone.com, and it's just giving an overview. One interesting thing about rectal insufflation, did you know they can actually measure an increase of oxygen in the blood after rectal ozone? Really crazy. I mean, how does it get there? Well, I explained that, and you can see that in the article. So I went through a lot of the different things about, what's the issue. We're kind of, waiting for disease to happen, many of us, but we can take preventative measures to reduce chronic oxidative stress, to reduce inflammation, and to help stimulate our immune system. And also, if we're already in the state of disease, that ozone therapy might be something worth looking at. So I dive into what ozone therapy is doing in the body, ozone's effect on the microbiome, basically reiterating what I said here. There's a couple small things I have to edit on the article, but it's a great article. So go to drzone.com and check it out. It's under Ozone News. The other thing, I'm going to be doing more of these. So if you guys like these live streams, like the video, because that helps me to know, Do people actually enjoy it? Are they just watching me in the background without listening? I don't know. So I really appreciate your interactions, what you're doing. Keep it up. And with that, I think that's a good place to close. Well, 2 more things. I am going to put a link in the description for that Zen blend, which is an adaptogenic blend of mushrooms, cacao powder, for stimulating, well, not stimulating, for relaxing. If you wonder how I'm such a chill guy, this is not why. It's just kind of built into me. But it's a good thing. It is relaxing. And I appreciate the product. I think it's healthy. And they use fabulous ingredients. So if you're into mushrooms and adaptogenic herbs, that's something to look into. And that's potentiawellness.com.